A few days before Christmas, Will 8 and 10 choose to resign from his editor role in New York and head home. He aimed to dedicate his life to writing and family. Everyone said goodbye to Will with tears, as not everyone is fortunate to have a friend like him. Mrs. Glay gifted him a construction company's business card as a farewell present. Upon arriving in his small hometown by train, Heather dropped him off at his new house. There, he spotted the love of his life, his wife Libby, waiting at the door. After a long separation, Will felt playful seeing her again. Their daughters, Dee and Trish, were also there. Reunited with his family, Will felt immense joy. Looking at his children's faces, he reassured himself he had made the right choice. Will was working on a novel, and Libby would be the first to read it when it was ready. A flower vase on the dinner table had just arrived that morning. Libby assumed Will sent it, but he replied, "I didn't send it. Maybe a fan did." After so long apart, they were finally together, immersed in love as Will had always hoped. The next morning, while gardening, Will noticed a neighbor named Jack glaring at him with annoyance. Jack arrived to pick up his daughter Chloe. He didn't want her to stay with his ex-wife. Legal proceedings were ongoing after the divorce regarding this issue. However, the court favored Anne, which frustrated Jack the most. In the afternoon, Will worked on his novel, but progress was slow. While painting a room, Libby noticed height markings on the wall left by the previous owners. That night, while Will was writing, the kids ran to him in fear, claiming they saw someone outside. Will checked but found nothing. The children had confused a tree's shadow for a person. The next morning, Will found footprints in the snow outside the window, raising his concern. Someone had indeed been there last night, and the footprints led to Libby's window. Was someone watching them? Will kept this to himself. Later that night, after hearing strange noises, Will went to the basement and discovered a few young people conducting a seance. They panicked upon seeing him, but one girl fell, and he caught her. When he questioned her, she said they thought the house was empty. People said it was a haunted house because 5 years ago, on a cold April night, the owner killed his whole family. One boy in the group said, "He's back." Will felt anxious, and they all ran away. This meant these kids were the ones who peeked through the window the night before. Will didn't tell Libby and went to the police the next day to learn more about the house. However, the police tried to downplay the situation, stating that only the homeowner, Peter, survived that night while the rest of the family was killed. When Will sought information about Peter, the police were unhelpful. Upon returning home, he found the children frightened on Libby's lap. They had overheard the neighbor's daughter discussing the deaths in the house. Will rushed to Anne's house, and Chloe opened the door without a word. She called Anne, and Will explained he had young children and wanted to shield them from past events. He asked Anne to be cautious with her words, and she looked at him silently, as if wanting to say something. There was an odd silence in her gaze. That midnight, when Libby noticed Will was missing, she went to the basement and found him trying to cover some writings on the wall with paint. Libby was shocked by the basement's state. The young people had left several newspaper clippings about past events. Seeing Peter's name on the wall, Libby asked Will everything. After learning the truth, she no longer wanted to stay in the house. To reassure her, Will suggested calling a priest, but Libby gently replied, "Maybe I'm overthinking. This is our home. We'll be happy here together." Just then, Libby noticed someone in a black suit behind the trees in the garden. Will chased after him, but the man escaped. Who was he? What were his intentions? It all remained a mystery. One day, the children went missing in the house. After searching everywhere, they found them playing in a hidden spot inside a room. Will realized that the previous family's children must have played there. In two books found in that spot, the names Catherine and Breish were written, indicating the previous family also had two daughters. The height markings by the stairs matched their names. This incident deeply troubled Will. He began reviewing newspaper clippings and film reels. A terrible incident had occurred in this house, yet none of the neighbors warned them about its history, which might explain why they got it so cheaply. Will discovered that Peter had shot his younger daughter in the back. Both Will and Libby were horrified by the severity of these events. The next day, brought food for Will to deepen their friendship, but when he asked about Peter, she hurried away without answering. When Will asked Libby why she hadn't come downstairs, she showed him three large bullet holes in the wall, symbolizing the horror of three deaths. That night, As they went through the newspaper clippings, they found more information about Peter. After that tragic night, he was admitted to a mental hospital named Greenhaven. The next day, Will visited the mental hospital where Peter was kept. At the reception, he was told to wait to meet Peter. But secretly, Will went to room 308 and met the patient there, shocked to see a photo of Peter's wife and two children that looked just like his own family. Just then, a man entered the room, and Will attacked him. The man introduced himself, saying he was not Peter. His name is Martin. He explains that Peter left the facility long ago. Will returns home unsure of what to tell Libby. If Peter is no longer in the hospital, maybe he's watching them now. Perhaps the children aren't safe anymore. Suddenly, hearing a car outside, Will rushes out and sees a man escaping in a car. When the police arrive, Will shows them the photo found in Peter's room and demands they arrest him. He watches silently as the incident unfolds. She wants to speak but stays quiet. As the police leave without assisting, Will begins to lose faith in the system. The next day, desperate for answers, Will meets Dr. Mlan, the head doctor of Greenhaven, and asks for all information about Peter. Dr. Mlan shows Will a video from the day Peter was admitted. Peter was extremely violent. Noticing a deep scar on Peter's head, Will inquires about it. Mlan explains that Peter's wife shot him in the head while trying to save herself. The bullet barely grazed him. After arriving at the facility, Peter once attempted to escape, claiming he wanted to kill the man who murdered his family. While watching the escape footage, Will realizes he was present at the hospital during that time. This confirms his suspicions were correct. But an even bigger shock awaited him. After some time, Peter refuses to be called Peter anymore, insisting he could never hurt his family. He even removed his name from the hospital records and chose a new identity, Will Atten. At that moment, Dr. Mlan shows Will 5-year-old surveillance footage. In it, Peter is none other than Will himself. This explains why the police didn't help him. Will is Peter. But how could that be possible? Is what Will is seeing real? He's left speechless. Accepting this truth means his family no longer exists. They died 5 years ago. Will angrily calls Libby. She asks, "Is that also a hallucination?" On the way back, it is revealed that the editor's office Will left at the story's start was actually Greenhaven, and his colleagues were patients there. This explains why they recognized Will and inquired about his novel. However, things become even more bizarre when Will returns home. The house he had just occupied hours earlier now appears deserted, as if no one had been there for years. Where are Libby and the kids? The door is locked, so Will enters through the basement's outer door and finds no one inside. It dawns on him that Libby and the children died 5 years ago. Everything since has been a manifestation of Will's mental illness, or more accurately, hallucinations. The sight of the flower vase on the table deeply unsettles him, causing him to weep uncontrollably. He hides his unfinished novel in the stairs, lights the candles on the table, and Libby suddenly appears from the next room. The sounds of children playing draw him back into his memories. Now, he and Libby are together. As she touches his forehead, she notices he has a high fever. With a trembling voice, Will confesses, "They say none of you are real. You all died 5 years ago, and it was my fault." Libby doubts him. Will calls for his elder daughter and asks her in front of the height marker, "What's your real name?" She answers, "British." Then he asks his younger daughter, Day, whose real name is Catherine. The pain in Will's chest becomes unbearable as he realizes that everyone he loves before him is not real, but a figment of his imagination. Libby, whose true name is Elizabeth, knows the truth but remains silent, wanting to keep Will content. She puts the children to bed and gently places cold compresses on Will's forehead to reduce his fever. Will gradually slips into a strange trance. Is this all just a dream? At midnight, he awakens to Libby's scream. The kids are gasping for air. Libby claims they have a high fever, but Will understands the reality. He embraces his daughter, noticing a bullet wound on her chest and shoulder. The bullet passed through her body. Dee also has a gunshot wound on her back. Will tries to make Libby face the truth, but she refuses. Their beautiful children die instantly. That heartbreaking night, trauma starts to consume Will from within. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Will opens it to find the police, who escort him out and lock the house. It's illegal to stay in an abandoned home like this. Seeing his condition, someone approaches and gently asks, Do you really see them? Will points to the upstairs window, saying, "Look, Libby is still watching me." The person calmly replies, "There's no one there. Your family rests in their graves now. We'll spend some time under a tree." Around midnight, when he tries to re enter the house, he discovers someone inside. In the dark, the man's face is hidden, but he admits to watching Will all along. The next morning, when Will meets and she invites him into her home for the first time. He asks what happened that night, and she says she didn't see it herself. Will then asks why she went to Greenhaven, mentioning Libby was her best friend who played with her children daily. That day, when she first met Will and he introduced himself, she almost said Peter but stopped, not wanting to remind him of the past. Did Will really kill them? She doesn't answer but feels he couldn't have. Just then, Chloe enters and tells Will, "I left the flower vase in the house. I miss my two friends so much. Do you really see them?" Will is left speechless, engulfed in a strange emptiness. Since he hasn't bathed for days, suggests he freshen up while she goes shopping with her daughter, but Will finds no peace. Every time he closes his eyes, flashbacks of that tragic night torment him. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rings. When he comes downstairs, he finds Jack at the door. Seeing Will in the house, Jack storms off angrily with his daughter. Will realizes his presence is causing conflict in this family, so it's better he doesn't stay. Before leaving, Jack a card for Dr. Glay and asks him to visit, as he once treated Will. Will meets Dr. Glay, who first asks, "Why did Libby leave me?" Glay replies that there wasn't strong evidence about the incident, but what was found was enough to hold Will accountable. Will says, "I'm still searching for my family's killer, and if it turns out to be me, I'll end myself." The doctor responds, "If you accept responsibility, I promise to cure you and free you from this pain." But Will leaves without a word. He returns home, breaks the glass on the door, and starts reminiscing. Then he sees Libby. The children are still waiting for him. Will puts them to bed and asks Libby what really happened that night, but she refuses to say anything. What does Libby want? Why did she shoot him? As Will touches the back of his head and feels the bullet wound, Libby breaks into tears. What really happened that night? Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and Will pleads for the truth, insisting he must say his final goodbye to his family. Otherwise, their souls will never be freed. Libby loved him deeply, but Will shouldn't have returned to this house. Will is stunned, thinking all of this is just a delusion. Then, someone asks Will to leave, repeatedly questioning how Libby died. With Libby beside him, her memories transport them back 5 years. That night, the children ran downstairs after hearing footsteps, expecting their father, but it was Boyce, a hired killer, with his gun pointed at the two little girls. Peter, Will was on the phone, sensing something was wrong. He hurried home, but then gunshots erupted. The two innocent girls were killed, and Libby was shot as well. Peter attacked Boyce, and during their struggle, Libby grabbed the gun and shot at Boyce, but the bullet struck Peter in the head. Boyce then killed Libby and fled. The bullet had only grazed Peter's skull, allowing him to survive, but erasing all his memories. At that moment, Jack arrived with Boyce and assaulted Peter. Jack restrained, and while Boyce drugged Peter and dragged him to the basement. Here, the biggest twist is revealed. 5 years earlier, Jack had hired Boyce to kill, and, suspecting her of infidelity, wanting full custody of Chloe. However, that night, Boyce mistakenly entered Peter's home instead of Anne's, annihilating an innocent family. Fast forward to the present. Jack keeps Peter locked in the basement, planning to kill him, when suddenly he shoots Boyce. Why? Because Boyce had been blackmailing Jack for 5 years and was responsible for the deaths of the two kids, thus forfeiting his right to live. Jack ties up and tries to frame Peter as mentally unstable, intending to make it look like he killed and then himself. He spreads gasoline throughout the house to incinerate everything. But at that moment, Libby appears, shocking Jack. She aids Peter in regaining consciousness, completely bewildering Jack. The truth emerges. Peter wasn't mentally ill. The true spirits of Libby and their daughters still haunted the house. Before Jack could comprehend this supernatural revelation, Peter strikes him and rescues, and just in time. Meanwhile, Boyce, still alive, finishes the task by pouring gasoline on the basement stairs and killing Jack. Within moments, the house is engulfed in flames. Yet Peter doesn't relent. Driven by love, He rushes back inside, believing his family awaits him. Near the stairs, Libby smiles peacefully, and Peter tells her, I don't want to lose you. They say, we don't want to lose you either, but everything has its time. Even though we're just puppets in fate's hands, love never loses. Libby gazes at him one last time, lost in their memories. Throughout her life, Peter was like a shadow beside her, even after death. In the blazing flames, Peter's family vanishes. But before escaping, he remembers to grab his hidden novel manuscript from under the stairs. By the time the police and firefighters arrive, everything is destroyed. Before anyone can react, Peter walks away into a new world. Time passes, and Peter Ward's novel gains national acclaim. There is no doubt about that name in bookstores. His novel proudly sits at the top of the country's bestsellers list, titled Dream House. The same story we just witnessed throughout this film.